Hello and welcome to today's Pantydeal podcast. I am your host, Dragon Lady 22, and I will be talking to you today all about how to stand out as a seller. So, whether you are new to selling on Pantydeal or not, I'm sure that we will be covering some top tips and some really good advice on how you can really make an impact on the site. Now, some of what I'm going to be talking about today is certainly things that I've implemented for myself as a seller, because it didn't take me very long to realize that, of course, Pantydeal is probably one of the most popular platforms when it comes to selling and buying used panties online. But really, when we're talking about thousands of sellers and thousands of buyers all across the world, you have to realize that you need to stand out if you're going to be successful. You need to make an impact and get noticed by buyers who are perusing online, trying to find exactly what it is that they're looking for. So how to stand out is really important, and it's an obvious next step for us in the podcast because we've already talked about getting started, how to be a successful panty seller, and now we want to look at, how can we really make an impact on the site and, make money? That's basically what we're here to do, right? Have a good time, make connections, and, make sales. So let's get into it, shall we? Like I said, it's really important. Even if you've been on the site for some time, you may feel that there's, an influx of new sellers coming on board all of the time. And so how do you make sure that you stand out in amongst a sea of sellers? So the first thing that I want to talk about is your profile description. And I know we've mentioned this in the podcast before, but I really want to reiterate just how important it is to put some time and energy into your profile description. Now, I happen to have read quite a number of descriptions. I'm always curious about new sellers and existing sellers, and especially when I got started on Pantydeal, I wanted to find out, what are the successful sellers doing? What do I need to be doing? Because of course, I came into Pantydeal, I was brand new to this industry, brand new to selling in this market, and I really didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. So of course, I took the time to have a look at what other sellers were doing, and particularly their profiles. Now, I want to just be clear here that, of course, I'm not recommending that anybody go out there and copy and paste other sellers' profiles. That really isn't what this is all about. This is about creating a profile description that is uniquely you, that describes you and your personality and what you're interested in, and basically what you have to offer buyers on the site, okay? So it pays, and I mean it literally pays, to put some time and effort into creating a really good, catchy profile description, because the first thing that a buyer will likely see when they're on the site are your pictures, and we're going to talk about those in a moment. But the next thing that they will want to check out is certainly your profile description. And so if you have a profile description that is really unique and interesting and it piques their curiosity, then they're likely to get in touch with you, okay? That's, how it works basically. So the key here is to make sure that you get the right balance of information. I'm always surprised, like I said, whenever I go and check out sellers' profile descriptions, just out of curiosity, it's always interesting for me to see what other sellers are doing, is that a lot of the time they don't really put any effort into writing anything more than maybe a line or two. Or much worse than that, I think, in my opinion, is they say, anything you want to know, just ask me. And really, you're not giving buyers very much to go on there. And you're also handing them the responsibility to come to you and ask you, potentially lots of different questions about who you are. And the thing to remember is that as buyers and sellers, we don't always have a lot of time and energy to sit down and ask people all about them. We want to make things as simple as possible for our buyers. We want to give them that information already so that they have a really good feel, a really good idea of who we are, just from reading the page, okay? So for you to say, oh, well, anything you want to know, just ask me. You're really people are likely to just shut down from that because they think, well, first impressions are everything. We've spoken about this before. If I go onto a profile and somebody, hasn't put any effort into, and this is buyers and sellers alike, into their pictures or to describing themselves or what they're looking for or what they're hoping to sell, then really I just think, well, that person isn't all that interested. They aren't all that committed to the work, right? Or to, engaging and creating that sort of connection or community here on Pantydeal. So just remember that first impressions really are everything. So, we've already spoken before in a previous podcast about things that you'd want to include on your profile description, but I don't think it hurts to just reiterate that you want to essentially describe yourself. Include, of course, your physical traits and your personality, things that you like to do in your spare time, because, the bottom line is we're all unique, right? Every single one of us in the world, we're all unique. And so if you have the same profile description as 100 other sellers on the site, how are you standing out? Basically the only way you're standing out, I suppose, in that instance is through your pictures, right? But maybe not even there. So just really think about it. And particularly if you specialize in a niche, for the industry, then that's something that you'd want to talk about. But also you'll notice there's a section there for hobbies. Don't be afraid to talk about things that you do in your spare time. Like perhaps you do something that's a little bit curious or different, and you may feel a little bit as if you shouldn't write things like that there, but I'm going to tell you that my advice and my recommendation is absolutely put those things down, because those are fantastic icebreakers and they are really good conversation starters for your buyers. So, if perhaps you talk about how you'd like to travel Asia, or, maybe some traveling you've already done, then you can start, that's a really good way for buyers to contact you and start a conversation, because maybe they're interested in the same things or they've been to the same places as you. So really, like I said, just don't be tempted to write the same profile as everyone else, okay? Because if you put the time and energy into standing out on your profile, you will absolutely reap the rewards, okay? And also, think about it from your buyer's perspective. If they've already checked out, say, 20 profiles that morning, and every single profile was more or less saying the same thing, that gets kind of boring after a while, right? Buyers really relish something that's a little bit different, So, like I said, a lot of sellers can feel scared or, uncomfortable about breaking outside of the norm, if you like. But for me and for, sellers that I've seen profiles that are really different and really just so interesting and make you want to read more, those are the ones that will stand out in the minds of buyers who come across your profile, okay? So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about there. The second thing is to be detailed, and this leads on from the first part about your profile description, but don't forget, on Pantydeal, there is a search function, and buyers who are looking for something very specific will be using that search box in order to find the buyers who offer the services or the items that they're particularly interested in, okay? So make sure that in your profile description you include those keywords, okay? Keywords are everything if you want to show up within a search for specific niches or for specific buyers' requests, okay? So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, for example, you may want to put MILF on your profile if that's what you want to identify as, and those are the target buyers that you're looking for are buyers who are interested in MILFs, then you would want to make sure that you have that written on your profile description, okay? So again, it's just about taking the time, and I'm going to say that honestly, the sellers that I speak to say that their profile description is the hardest part for them, because, we all love to talk about ourselves, but when it comes to writing about ourselves in a way where we're trying to sell ourselves online, for some reason, this can be a real sticking point for sellers. And I get that. I have 2 pieces of advice for you if you are in that situation. The first is, don't be afraid to ask other sellers to just have a look over your profile and see if they have any recommendations or advice. This happens a lot on Pantydeal in the sellers groups that I'm members of, that, sellers will go, hey, do you mind just having a look and giving me your advice? Because sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, right? You've, been working on your profile for a while, and then there could be something that's really obvious to somebody who's outside the situation that they can go, well, you maybe want to put something about this or take out this bit. So, don't be afraid to do that. Reach out to other sellers, make those connections, and then, just ask them very nicely if they wouldn't mind just taking the time to look over and see how you're doing. And the second piece of advice is to go online. You can find a lot of really interesting articles about how to write a really compelling profile. Normally, these are centered around dating sites, but there's a lot of crossover there because it's the same thing. We're wanting to attract individuals who may want to purchase from us by being able to describe ourselves in perhaps even a sexy way. Okay, so do your research online. I've found some really interesting articles that have really helped me, and it can help you too. So that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. As I alluded to earlier, pictures are a really great way for you to stand out as a seller. Okay, so it goes without saying, and I know we've spoken on the podcast about this before, making sure that your profile picture and the pictures that you use for your shop items are really good pictures, right? Really high quality. Really think about the impression that you want to give. So, for example, if you took a picture of you just in your bathroom and there was maybe like clutter everywhere and, like that you just hadn't really thought through what the picture was going to look like, that is not going to stand out as much as, a seller who's really taken the time to perfect the background, perfect the lighting, experimented with different angles, tried different ways of standing, whatever, all that kind of thing, right? So what I'm saying is your profile description, as I've mentioned earlier in the podcast, is the first impression that buyers are likely to make on you. Now, that's not to say that they have to be completely professional, right? Nobody expects you to go out and get a professional photographer to take your pictures. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is just be really aware and make an effort in creating profile pictures that are going to have that wow impact, right? Where it's going to just look different from everybody else that's doing roughly the same thing. And again, it goes back to not being afraid to experiment with different things and to try different, approaches, because sometimes we can feel like it's better to fit in and do the same as everyone else, when what a lot of buyers are looking for is somebody that's, doing things a little bit differently. So that's the first thing that I would say about your pictures. And if you're worried because you think, well, I don't have any photography experience, I don't really know what I'm doing, there are lots of new apps coming out all the time that can help you create fantastic images. They can completely change the lighting of your pictures. They can, you can add borders, you can add effects and all sorts of things. So, there's lots of things out there that can help you. And again, don't be scared to try different types of approaches, different things that you can do, or even use things like pic collage, where you can add text and you can add special effects and other pictures on top. Like really just allow your creativity to come out and have maybe a range of different profile pictures that you can play around with. You could change your profile picture every few days just to keep things fresh and new. And that's another good way to stand out, because, if you haven't changed your profile picture in a while, it might be time to experiment with something new. And, it will just be refreshing for the buyers who've possibly, not checked out your profile already. So pictures are a really great way to establish yourself as a brand. And if you don't know what a brand is really just the personality of a business. And for you technically are your business. So how you present your pictures and your adverts and your shop really you want to try and have a common theme throughout. So if you are going to use colors in your pictures and your shop adverts and all things like that, then you want to stick to the same colors, right? If you're going to use fonts on top of your images in, Pic Collage or an app like that, you want to choose the same fonts all the time. And what that means is that when buyers come across your images or your adverts or your profile picture or anything, that they are seeing the same thing and they're beginning to associate those colors, that style, that look, that personality with you. And that's a good way to stand out as well, because it shows that you are taking a really professional approach towards your selling and that you're making an effort in, tying everything together and being noticeable by your brand alone. Okay, so leading on from that, we're talking about personality, and I'm sure I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but a really great way to stand out is to inject some of your personality into your business. So I've mentioned about not being afraid to allow some of you to come through with regards to your profile description, okay? To talk about what is unique and different about you and how you do stand out from other sellers. And the same goes with everything to do with your brand. You make a decision on some level about how you want to be perceived by buyers who are on the site. So you may decide that you want to come across as very high-end, very boutique, very, professional. Or you may decide that you want to come across as playful and fun and sexy or silly even. You decide. And the easiest thing to do is to allow your personality to come through your work, and then you don't have to try very hard to be something that you're not. But ultimately you make a decision, and then that makes advertising and writing your profile description and taking your pictures much easier, because you already have that brand personality in mind, okay? So you know how you want to be perceived. So for me personally, I really like to come across as fun and funny and playful. Those are, that's my personality. That's what comes through in my my description of myself and in my adverts. If you checked out my profile, you would see that my adverts are a little bit silly like that. And that's been a conscious choice by me to, inject my personality into what I do. That doesn't mean that that's going to appeal to everybody. And of course, this should always be something that you play around with and experiment and see for yourself what works. But for me, it feels accurate for me. It feels good fun for me. And it makes selling, exciting for me. So that's what my personality is in my work. But you get to decide how you would like to come across, okay? And make sure that when you're creating your adverts and your items and all that kind of thing, that you're always just reminding yourself of, what your personality is and how you're coming across and how you're being perceived by buyers, okay? So it may sound complicated, it really isn't. It's just about allowing some of what is uniquely you to come through in your work, and that will certainly attract buyers who resonate with what you do and how you do it, and they're eager to buy from you because it's you. Does that make sense? So let's look at the next aspect then. A great way to stand out as a seller is to, of course, provide an absolutely excellent customer service experience. Okay, so if you've been on Pantydeal for a while, you'll know that reviews are very important, of course, when it comes to selling, because buyers will want to check out your pictures first, and then they'll likely read your profile description. And then the next thing they're likely to look at are your reviews to see what other buyers are saying about their experiences with you. So for that reason, it pays, again, literally, to treat every customer in the most professional way possible, okay? Always being courteous, always being respectful. And if you're unsure, listen to our last podcast episode where we were talking about how buyers and sellers like to be approached, like to be dealt with, like to be communicated with, okay? And what makes for a wonderful experience for them. That was a really useful podcast. Definitely go and listen to that. But you want to make sure that you're doing all of the right things, because then you're more likely to receive a wonderful review and a repeat buyer, hopefully. and you will get known as a very good seller very quickly, okay? So, you can build up a fantastic number of 5-star reviews that just go to show that you are a fantastic seller, a top seller even, and then you will be more likely to stand out as a fantastic seller on the site, okay? You may even find that other buyers will recommend you to other buyers on the site, okay? So word of mouth is really important, and just being known as someone who provides excellent customer service, right? That you are always kind and courteous and discreet, and that will just help you to stand out even more because you will get that reputation as a fantastic seller. So if you want to achieve that, then of course you have to be on the site and building know, like, and trust amongst all of the buyers, but just making sure that when you do make a sale that you really go above and beyond and go the extra mile for your buyers, and they won't forget it, and you will get that reputation as a fantastic seller, okay? The next thing I'd like to mention is, of course, the Pantydeal contests. If you want to stand out, then you need as many eyes on you and what you do as possible. And the best way to do that, or at least one of the best ways to do that, is to enter the Pantydeal contest. So if you don't know, Pantydeal contests tend to run, I'm going to say, every 6 to 8 weeks. And they're on lots of different themes that you can decide to really go to town and create some fantastic picture entries for each contest. So normally they run around holiday seasons, but yeah, they can be on lots of different things. And there's a forthcoming contest this week, actually, if you want to take part in that. And again, this is just a really fantastic way for you to get a lot of eyes on you, because obviously all of the contest entries are on the same page and people are voting for who they think is the best entry. And it's something, again, I would recommend that you don't just, enter any old thing, but you really make an effort to try and fit in with the theme and create some fantastic photos. And I'm always blown away by some of the entries that I see in the contest. And sometimes I have time to enter them myself, not always, but it is a fantastic way to get a lot of traffic to your profile, because buyers are going on to vote for, the best entries. And then you may catch their eye and they've never come across your profile before, and all of a sudden, they're clicking on to see just what you have to offer. So I absolutely recommend that you enter the contests, and if you've got time to really just, go the extra mile and create some fantastic entries. So the next thing I want to talk about is being creative, and this is something that I think a lot of sellers, again, maybe feel a little bit anxious about doing something that's a little different. But if you come up with a really great idea for a product or a service that you haven't seen any other sellers advertise, then please have the courage to put together an advert, a classified advert, or a shop item, and just put it out there and see, because you may be surprised what buyers would be interested in. Like, maybe it's something that if you haven't seen it advertised, you think, oh, well, I don't think anyone would be interested in that. But it could just be that nobody else has had the idea yet, or people are doing it in a different way than what you've, come up with. And I've had this happen to me a few times where I've gone, oh, that would be a really great idea, and I've advertised it. Some things have gone down really well, other things not so much, but it's always a really good idea to just put it out there and see who bites, just give it a try and see, because you may be surprised it could go on to become your best seller. So don't be worried if just because you don't see somebody advertising something in a certain way that you shouldn't do it either. You absolutely should give it a try. And the more you allow yourself to be creative, the more things you can come up with, and you could start creating a whole different line of products or services where you become known as the person in that particular niche. So, give it a try and see. The next thing I want to talk about is connecting with other sellers and buyers. Okay, so you may be wondering, well, how do I stand out just by making friends with other people on the site? And this goes back to what I was talking about before with word of mouth and being recommended. That may apply to, sellers recommending other sellers to their existing buyers. If they're not able to fulfill an order, they can refer to someone else. And so that's why when I was talking about earlier about becoming well known as somebody that's a great seller, that's kind, courteous, professional, goes the extra mile, that can pay off further down the line, because other buyers and other sellers can end up recommending you, and you just become known as somebody that is really reliable, honest, trustworthy, and all of those things. So again, it's about creating a community on the site and us all getting to know each other, what our strengths are, what we can offer, and what we're known for on Pantydeal. So don't be afraid to connect with other sellers as well as buyers, and add people as friends, get to know them, and you'll be surprised as what that can lead to further down the line. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about with regards to standing out as a seller is to make use of Pantydeal's profile booster. So if you're not sure what that is, certainly go onto the website and have a look. But it's basically a way of attracting more attention and therefore more buyers by using Pantydeal's social media platforms. So what you can do is you can upload pictures that Pantydeal will use to promote you on their social media. So, perhaps their Instagram or their Twitter or whatever. But you can also choose to upload video content, which they also have accounts on major platforms, like YouTube, for example. And again, it's just a way of you reaching more eyes, more buyers who are following these accounts. And it's really useful if you, for example, don't have a social media account on Instagram or on Twitter or whatever, that you're already getting that presence there just by uploading to the profile booster. So it's definitely worthwhile. It's, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. So you may as well, right? Why not? And if you have some great pictures, then, upload them to the profile booster and have people come to check out your page just because they happen to come across you on one of the social media channels. Okay? So I hope those ideas have been really helpful for you. Like I said at the beginning, whether you are new to Pantydeal or whether you've been around for a while, chances are you may not have been familiar with some of those things that we've talked about, or you may just not have seen it in those ways before. So I'm really hopeful that something that I've shared with you today will have an impact on your sales, on your business, and for buyers on your experience with sellers on the site. So that's us for today. Thank you very much and have fun. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.